Honest community, before we dive into this episode, we've got a quick free favour to ask. If you enjoy the Honest Property podcast, please hit like, follow and subscribe wherever you're listening from. It helps us grow, reach more people and bring on guests that you want to hear from. Thanks for being a part of this. We appreciate you more than you know.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Honest Property Podcast. We're your hosts Becky and Ruth and we're the Honest Property Sisters, and we've built a multi-million-pound property portfolio over the last 12 years, and we love having unfiltered chats about building wealth, purpose and freedom that actually helps you feel good. And on this episode we are going to be talking about whether you can build aligned wealth in a debt-based world. And this topic came about because Ruth actually shared with me a podcast episode that she was really interested in, that was on Up the Gains, right?
Yeah. It was a guy called Joe, what's his last name? Oh, I completely forgot his last name. Joe something, it will come to me, and it's called What's the Problem? And I don't know if anyone's seen this YouTube video, but it basically talks about what the problem is with like the whole economy and how everyone feels this, but we don't really talk about it enough, and what can we do and what the solution could be to solve the economy across the world. But basically the underlying issue is that the whole world, especially the Western world, are countries that rely on debt heavily. They're borrowing money from the future that they don't even have.
Yeah, and when I listened to this episode, I was like, everything they were saying I could resonate with, because it was things that I was feeling that I couldn't articulate very well. So it's basically some governments use a big red button just to print more money, but that creates a big that filters into lots of different issues within society that just perpetuate make problems worse. And something I was feeling about the UK is, I don't know if you've felt this as well. Like if you go and buy like a packet of crisps, for example, the packet is the exact same, but it's less crisps in that packet. And that is just one really simple example of how I feel about the value you get for services and products now in the UK. You pay more for less. It's either less of that product or poor service or poor quality, because this issue meant that some saving had to be made somewhere, and people are having to just be stretched, like businesses are having to be stretched to find a way to be able to continue business. But that came at the cost of the quality of service or the product, or the business is just shutting down.
Yeah, or they going back to the crisps scenario, I think also from what I'd heard in the podcast, they were talking about the analogy of even with chocolate fingers, and there used to be like so many in a packet, but they're actually 7 chocolate fingers down. That's where it's got to, is that you're paying so much more for those Cadbury chocolate fingers, but actually you get 7 less now, but you pay more. It's just crazy.
More. Yeah.
And especially like when it comes to...
Yeah, and I think...
No, you go ahead, Manay.
I was going to say, Ruth calls me Manai, by the way. I feel like I have to disclaim this each time. It just means older sister in our language. But yeah, here to be sisters to all of you who are listening in this and navigating this world, because we're figuring it out too. But I was just going to say that, the value for what you get, it just feels you just feel it. And I think everyone feels it now. The return on what you pay for is so expensive. Like I see these real jokes or memes or whatever on Instagram, and they're just people joking about how it costs them at least 20 quid just to step out of their house in the UK. And it's like, but what did you, like you paid, that was just for parking. Like what value, what return on your money were you getting for that? I know we always talk about ROI, but I really feel like everything is like you spent time and skill earning your money. So you want to know if you're going to put it somewhere, it's going to make you feel good for exchanging your life for that thing, you know? And if you're not having a particularly great experience or a particularly great time, or it just costs you that much to get to that place to do something in the first place, then it makes you feel like, well, why am I bothering to do anything? I feel like in the UK, so for context, Ruth and I are on in Southeast Asia at the moment, and obviously our pound is able for now to stretch further in these countries where we have more room than we did in the UK to go out and grab a coffee without thinking about it too much, or getting transport somewhere without worrying about the cost of that transport, like to get there too much. We're able to have a better quality of life because the value on our money in exchange for the experience or the service that we're paying for is so much clearer,
Especially when we
and
are
so much better. I'm sure
we are
there's a
I would probably think that a lot of millennials, Gen Zs, and the alpha generate was it alpha generation are even more so.
no, Alpha's
Who is
Noah's
it?
age. They're
Wait,
the
who's the other one
babies.
after Gen Z?
Yeah, they're boomers.
No, it's the other way around. The Gen Z are after millennials.
Oh,
Anyway, my point is there was a lot more people
I'm
that
not
are
sure.
our age and younger who are wanting to have exponential. They want more experiences over things because, but the cost of that, the experience is so expensive now. Like if in the UK you're paying what just to go out for a brunch, you're already paying like £40 like, to include a drink and like have a like go for a roast. I think it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous where your money stretches further elsewhere for now. And I want to go back to the point of
And I'm sorry, but that roast probably wasn't even
people
that
are really
good. Like
nitpicky
they
about
had
the
to
roast.
make it. You probably had less
Yeah,
potatoes.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
everyone's really like they care a lot about how the potatoes are made or how many. Ours for us is how many are we getting, the ROI on your potatoes. But I wanted to go back to the red button theory that came from this YouTube video that we watched, and it's the issue with this red button is because the governments are printing money. They're printing more money, which is making all the effort that you put into your work, the value of items that you own or the things that you do is becoming more expensive, and the cost of everything is a lot more expensive because the government are pressing the red button and making more money. So what's the point in working harder for money when it can be so easily printed? There's no value in it anymore, is the point. And the only things that actually hold
Mm.
value, where it means the government can't just take your money, is essentially putting it into assets. But if your assets are also, say you have mortgages, like a lot of investors have mortgages on the properties, because we have mortgages on ours. But the idea is that eventually you're no longer leveraging and you own your properties outright. But that's how people build wealth, because we you are taught as an investor to build wealth by leveraging on debt until you no longer need to. That's just how people get wealthy. You lean into the debt system.
At least in the UK, Ruth and I have talked a lot
Yeah.
about in previous episodes and on our content generally about the BRRR method. And that is a method that is quite unique to certain economies like the UK, where you can leverage off of debt and recycle your money. But Ruth's absolutely right in saying that you are still in debt, and there is good debt and bad debt. So this was something that was a real big divider for us when we were learning about finance and reading Rich Dad Poor Dad way back at the beginning. So good debt, just to clarify for listeners, good debt is when you're able to use debt to make you more money. And the buy, refurbish, rent, and refinance system is a really effective strategy in property to be able to use that debt and make it good debt, because you can buy essentially multiple properties once you've raised the equity on the first property into building a portfolio.
Until you get to a point where you then pay off the debts so that you own these properties outright, then you're no longer in the debt cycle to be able to build your wealth. But that you've got to go through just having patience and holding on until you can pay them off.
And then,
but that's just how it works in the UK.
And then bad debt, on the other hand, is of course if you decide to get a credit card with like a 20k limit on it, or any limit on it, and buy things that are not going to make you money. Yeah, like clothes or holidays you couldn't afford in the first place.
Afford
a car that is just going to depreciate in value. That is considered bad debt. But not all countries use this, have this opportunity, and there'll be parts of the world where you are more like the mortgage options are far fewer. So a buy-to-let product, for example, is seen as like a good debt product as long as you are able to get a cash flowing property. Whereas in like places in Asia, it can be difficult to find a mortgage product that is just interest only and you're not paying it down. So buy-to-let products are usually you just pay the interest, not paying down the principal, which is where you can create the leverage. But on the other hand...
Hey guys, if you're new to property investing, we know exactly how hard it is to figure out where to start. That's why we created the Beginner's Roadmap. It's your guide to mastering the fundamentals so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. Just hit the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into this episode.
The way the UK appears, I'm just going to say it, in the rest of the world right now, is like if it was a person, to me the UK looks like somebody who pretends that they've got, like who's got 20, like they got that 20k credit card loan out that they couldn't afford on a low income budget, and they are splashing out on all these things, and all these splashing out on things that they can't afford, and so they appear like they're successful and wealthy to the rest of the world, but the reality is so different. There's so much bad debt. But yeah, just to go through what, like, we've just learned a lot. I think you've got to be always taking initiative to grow your intellect and not just accept what's fed to you in the news. I always felt like the news is like a good place to get to get an idea of the outward perspective of the world, but you're either going to be misinformed or uninformed. So make your own informed decisions on what's happening. And this particular episode was really interesting.
Where it talks about, let's say, it's like, because we talked about what good debt is to leverage, invest in, and to grow, but it says, what if the entire system runs on borrowed money that keeps losing value? So money just keeps losing value. This is why a lot of people say online, especially when they're in the wealth space, don't just leave your money in a current account. You need to put it into savings accounts or into your ISAs or into like property, like assets that allow it to grow and keep accumulating interest. Because if you leave it just in a bank account, it's depreciating every single day because money keeps being printed. So that's the cause of your money losing value.
Yeah. And just going back to the BRRR method that Ruth and I like talking about, 10 years ago, we were able to put out majority of our money per deal, which allowed us to grow add a new property to our portfolio every like 1.5 to 2 years. Now the reality is very different. If you want to use a strategy that's going to be very minimal like effort for you to look after and have a peaceful life, so a strategy like service accommodation or HMOs are going to be a lot more effort for you to hold onto, and there's a lot more regulations and restrictions now that are putting people off of taking that kind of a risk with an asset that they were just hoping was going to be an asset. if you're going to just do long-term buy-to-lets using the BRRR method, you are not going to be able to scale or grow your portfolio at the same rate as before, because the cost of debt to start doing that strategy is much higher than it was when we started. So the reality is, nowadays, if you're going to do a low hassle long-term buy-to-let, acquiring low hassle buy-to-let long-term property assets, your money is going to sit in the project, in the property for longer before you can see at least cash flow benefit from it.
Before we continue, here's a quick thought. Ever feel like there's just never enough time to focus on what really matters in your business? You don't have to do it all alone. As they say, a great team makes everything easier. That's why we've partnered with the Freedom Geek. Their talented Filipino VAs help us with tasks like admin and podcast editing, just like for this episode, giving us the freedom to focus on what really moves the needle. If you're looking to reclaim your time and to work smarter, then check out the Freedom Geek. All the details are in the show notes. Now let's get back to our conversation.
And you need to see it as a long-term wealth storage. This is not a get rich quick. This is long-term wealth storage.
No.
This is wealth. People for a long time have used property to store their wealth, because cash is not reliable anymore.
Yeah. So I think this is Ruth and I just saying the truth, because we like to keep it honest on the Honest Property Podcast always, is that at least with the UK market, if that's where you're listening from, whilst we're out and about in the world, we're slowly learning about other markets, but at least for the UK market, which is where our own portfolio is based, it will be it's a much slower growth to wealth if it is an asset that you are happy to take responsibility for.
Yeah. So what you need to do really is you just got to keep your personal leverage low, like keeping your personal debts low. Like, don't start thinking about getting a car and finance if you can't afford it. And I mean, I'm nothing against that, but I mean, that's generally, if you can own a car outright, why wouldn't you? Like, I bought a car here that was within my budget. I own it outright, but I own it and I'm happy. It may not be like a swanky Porsche, but it's a good Malaysian trusted branded car, and I own it fully, and I have no debt with that. Then you got to prioritize your tangible assets, build income streams that don't rely on inflationary growth, and understand that slow wealth is what equates to anti-debt wealth. So slow growth wealth is not going to make you panic when the economy is constantly changing and you're losing value in your cash money, honey.
Another way to keep leverage low is just relocate. That's like clearly what Ruth and I have done.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want to compromise your lifestyle too much and be confined to the house, because every time you step out it's going to cost you 50 quid. Maybe you move to a different part of the UK. Maybe there's a cheaper city.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be abroad. It can just be in the UK.
Yeah.
But then I know that there's so many people like, I should be able to grow up where I came from. And it's like, but the reality is now, you choose to be poor then, or choose to grow. Like, the economy has changed. Like, I don't. Of course, it would be lovely to be able to stay in the same place if you can afford to, or like, I don't know, just. But you can't deny that the world has changed and you need to adapt. If you don't adapt, you're gonna die.
Go where you're treated best. Life
I said that
is
very
now.
bluntly.
Yeah, that was a bit blunt. But go where you're treated best. Go where you can still enjoy life now. That's what obviously Ruth and I would recommend. Build income streams that don't rely on inflationary growth. So obviously, if you put in a really practical way, Ruth and I have this small portfolio in the UK, and they will grow and they will go up with inflationary growth, because that's how property assets work. Which, if you have assets, puts you a little bit more ahead. It doesn't save you, but it puts you a bit more ahead. So once we've reached a point where our assets are able to pay down the original mortgages in a decade or so's time, then we will have full ownership, and that is the goal in the end. But you have to stick around for the long game. But depending on that alone is not effective, is not
you need
smart.
to diversify.
Yeah. So still provide service or value through, maybe you have another job or you have a side hustle or something.
Yeah, you're investing as well in other wealth storage assets.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like that's just one piece of the puzzle. But I think in property, the only narrative that ever gets talked about online is just the motivation to buy the property. But actually, they don't talk about how you then remove that leverage later on. And that's the bit that needs to be said more, which is you need to get out of leveraging eventually, unless you want to carry on leveraging forever and never pay your debts down. People do that as well. But for us, we want to be able to not be leveraging debt when we are old.
Yeah, like the goal is to have an enjoyable life now and later. So, because you only get one, it's not just about like acquiring and grinding for the sake of grinding. It's being adaptable to making sure that you can still live that life that you want. So if the whole economy is running on borrowed time, what would freedom look like for you? Is it less debt? Would you want more ownership, knowing what you know now? Or just you're happy to move forward just with a fuller understanding and awareness of the game that we're all playing? Because it's not gonna get better anytime soon, at least.
No.
Yeah. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'll share the link to that Up the Games episode that inspired this episode, so that you can listen to that as well. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.